Being said, I want to go ahead and kind of turn it over to Alana, who's going to talk to us a little bit about scheduling.
Yeah, hello everybody. We are facing now this idea of teaching from home, and when we teach from home, we are moving from a very strict schedule of school life to now our home life, where there's no bells, there's no blocks, and we got to create it all on our own. And this can be going from like working 9 to 5, which teachers actually never do anyways, but feeling like we're actually always working and never not working in this format. And so I just kind of wanted to go through a few things to think about and to maybe help you as you're managing this, so that teaching is not taking over your whole life, but you are able to compartmentalize and be present at home, be present for yourself, and also be most present for your students. And so some things to think about, questions that I have posted when you are thinking about your ideal week of teaching, is when are the times that you actually have specific time teaching blocks? So maybe these are your scheduled Zoom classes or your scheduled Google Classroom things that you are doing with students. Another thing is, what about school meetings, like staff meetings or a meeting like this? Specific scheduled things. And what about when you're doing prep, or when you're following up on students' work or email? Also, when you are in touch with families, so how are you available for families? Are you having specific office hours, and when are those going to be? What about your own family responsibilities? Some of us are parents and trying to manage our own children's schooling, or we are, just being people and in families and having to have many of those responsibilities. And also, how are we connecting with ourselves and making sure that we are taking care of ourselves, connecting with our family, making sure we're eating healthy and have time for making meals and sleeping and waking up. And so these are some things to think about. Sarah, do you want to go to the next slide? Awesome. So some things to think about when you're organizing your time. And I took a lot of these ideas from, one second, I'm going to show you. I am a big fan. I don't know if many of you have heard of this, but Together Teacher. And I read this book, and it's amazing. And I did this as a teacher, and you can go to her website, the Together Teacher, if you Google it, and she has all these resources right now about how to organize yourself at home. And so a lot of these ideas I have taken from her. And a big thing that they believe in is like creating a schedule for yourself for the week. And this is the best way to protect your time, so that you are working in school hours, right? And you also have time for yourself outside of school, even though it's all happening at home. And so what does that mean? That means creating a time every week that you are meeting with yourself. And that means maybe it's on a Friday, maybe it's on a Sunday, where you are like cleaning up your space, maybe your emails, you're catching up with that and kind of like going through to prep for the next week, and then actually creating a schedule that goes through every part of the day and thinking about, how am I going to schedule my day so that when I'm on, and when I'm off, I'm off. And then giving yourself some time to like, did I cover that, or did I? And then if you didn't, moving it to the next week. Also making sure that you have a specific space. I know many of us have desks at our home. Maybe we don't. Maybe we have a kitchen table. Maybe we have our bed. All of our spaces are looking different. But making sure that you have a dedicated space and supplies ready. I know I'm talking to teachers, so this is very obvious stuff, but it really helps to think about and making sure that you have that protected space, that this is my workspace. I don't have my teacher's desk at school anymore, but this is where I'm conducting my business. And also that idea of communicating to yourself and also to others of what this schedule looks like. So what do you want? Like this vision of your time, and how you want to spend it, and how do you put that into your weekly schedule. And that includes even your personal time. Like if it's really important that you are exercising every day, if it's really important that you have time to go that week grocery shopping, like you're actually putting it in your schedule, so that the rest of the time when you're teaching is protected, and that you aren't like checking emails while you're making dinner and then responding to student work while you're trying to go through your son's math homework himself, but like you are giving yourself that time to be very focused, and also setting boundaries. And that's part of it. And part of that could mean I made a schedule for my kids, and on it I also said like mommy's work time, like if you need something you can, and giving them a list of things because I'm not available right now. Sarah, you want to go to the next? You want the next one? And so thinking about, how can you make these boundaries for yourself? And how can you communicate that with others? And that means also with your partner, or, other people that you are living with or working with, maybe teams that you want to plan meetings with, and making sure that that works. And then also thinking about how are we scheduling and supporting our families, because this is really tough. And, this is new for all of us. And especially if some of your students are not an only child, maybe their siblings also have a school schedule, trying to figure out and support them in managing their learning. Sometimes I would recommend, like right now Liz is recording this, maybe some students will not be able to be on a Zoom call at a certain time every day, but you can record your meetings, and then have that availability for students to check in later if they were not able to be on there. So also a great thing that you can do is you could do a whole little mini lesson about what does your workspace look like? And that idea that students should also have a workspace, and they should have supplies, and they should have like a space that they consider kind of their sacred, this is my learning spot. And you could make it fun. You could share pictures of it and share with the rest of the class. What is your workspace? And this idea that it all looks different. It's not in school, but celebrating those differences, and thinking about what are the things that make them all really special. And you could even videotape your own workspace, and and look, I have sharpened pencils, or here I have like an extra stapler in case I need it, and markers. And also supporting parents. And maybe this means like creating like a focus of your office hours one week or every few days on checking in with parents and being like, how is it going? How can I support you in, maybe even your scheduling, and taking that feedback. I know some teachers have been sending surveys to parents, which have been really helpful in having them schedule their week. And also thinking about when are specific assignments due. So it's not like things are constantly due that you are having a hard time keeping up with it, but that there's specific times and some flexibility there for students, so that you're not constantly checking work, but there are specific times that you have created to check that work. So let me think. And some of this does mean for some of us that your schedule might be a little like looser. For some, I know for me, I like to have mine I like to make my whole list of all the things that I need to do, and I put it into like, what do I need for myself this week? What do I need for school? What do I need for my children? And then kind of blocking that out into my schedule. And also this idea that I wouldn't advise making a schedule more than a week in advance, because this is hard stuff. We've never been here before. And so the following week might need to look really different, and having that flexibility and thought in what, you need for you. But I would really recommend that you have a specific time that you are scheduling for yourself to schedule, and to kind of like put yourself together for the next coming week. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts or things that they are doing already that have been really helpful, that, you know, that they have found to have kind of helped them wrap their brain around this? I know that for me personally, the first 2 weeks, my brain was just like, oh my God, I don't know how to deal with all of this unstructured time. And slowly but surely, I have managed to do that. So is there anything anybody would like to share? Maybe raise a hand or put it in the chat, or just anybody?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about schedules of my parents. The way I look at it is these healthcare workers, and many of my parents are healthcare workers,
Mm-hmm.
are working 12-hour shifts. And it's not that I think we should, but I feel that I should be somewhat flexible. I had conferences over the phone recently,
Mm-hmm.
and many of my parents are healthcare workers. So when it comes to assignments, it's kind of ambiguous because so many of my students didn't have devices. They still don't. So I want to just understand how everyone else is doing with specific days that assignments are due, with that in mind.
Yeah, would anybody like to share what they've been doing?
I think one thing, Lori just shared in the chat, accept an assignment anytime on any day. Yeah, that's smart. I think one thing that we have been talking about is just the fact of having a lot of grace with our kids, with our families. And that even if the assignment is due on this day, knowing that if they get it in a week later, like, we're going to accept it then. That's great. Smart, Lori.
Yeah, and accepting it anytime does not mean that you need to be grading it at any time of the day, right? But still allowing yourself, okay, at 4 o'clock is when I'm like grading today. Because that's how we will just continue working all day long.
And Kristen, thanks, dropped in the chat our Big Shoulders Fund distance learning site that has a couple of schedules on there, both for kids and for at home. So if you are not sure where to start with this, you can always take a look at the schedules that are on that distance learning site, and that might give you kind of a leg up, because I know I never like starting from scratch. I always like having something to start with. Awesome. When we jump into our grade level breakout rooms, we can also talk more about scheduling, and maybe that might look a little bit different for each kind of grade level.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk through our next chunk of our presentation, which is just some of the communication tools that you can use to communicate with your students and families, and also ways to record things. This presentation, this Google Slides presentation, we will share, right, Liz? And so each of these icons have a hyperlink to a tutorial that you can watch in order to kind of set this up if you're interested in it. So there are like a lot more of these available for teachers. So I think finding ones that really work for you and using them. And if it doesn't work for you, then kind of switch gears and pivot a little bit more and find something that works. So if we're talking about the video tools for teaching, so like Alana and Liz were saying, being flexible and recognizing that our students are needing things in different ways. So like whole group lessons that are live, maybe an opportunity to do a class check-in via Zoom, connecting with your students, all those things are important. But then also I know some teachers I've talked to have been like, it's been really hard to do a live Zoom call because even if I'm muting them, they're chatting about something that they shouldn't, whatever. They're not totally focused. So trying to figure out ways that work for you as far as communicating the content. So if you're just kind of moving, either reviewing skills that you've already done or moving towards teaching new learning, there are different avenues for that. So like I said, Zoom is great for a live content. You can also do a Zoom call by yourself and just click record and do it that way. So if you're familiar with Zoom, as you are because you're on this call, that's a way to do it. There's also Loom, which is also a very easy, very straightforward tool that you can have like a Google Chrome extension, and you just click the button and it automatically pops up. And so that's been really nice to use as once you click stop for recording, then there's a link that you can just automatically push out to your students. Same thing with YouTube. I am not a well-versed YouTuber, but I have figured out how to make my own YouTube page or whatever it's called. I don't even know. And it's pretty straightforward. So you can also, if you're worried about that, you can make all of your videos private and then just send the link out to students. So it's not something that random people can search. Flipgrid is also a really great opportunity for teachers to send videos on how to do new skills, and especially there's a document camera type situation attached to that too, which is really nice. Padlet is basically like a virtual bulletin board, so you can post links to the whatever you want students to learn about, and then they can respond back on that on each one of those, like basically Post-its. So yeah, those are some video tools. Like I said, there are many more. So finding something that works for you. I know I've like oscillated between just filming a video on my phone, but then I figured out how to use Loom, and I feel like that's been easier for me. And so just kind of figuring out what works and is easiest for you. So once you've actually have some sort of video that you want to send to students, there's obviously, you can send via email, but communicating through parents or kids, and obviously taking into consideration your students' great age and their access to technology. But there's Google Classroom is really great for students, especially who already have it set up and are familiar with it. I was talking with a teacher yesterday who said that something that was really helpful for her in Google Classroom was assigning students a Google slide to respond to. So she just had a blank, it was like, read a book and then I want you to respond in this way. And so she would have a Google slide and post the question at the top of the Google slide and upload it within Google Classroom. And so then students were able to click and make a copy of it, and it was there for them. And so they didn't have to worry about like writing it down on a piece of paper, taking a picture, uploading it, and just, it kind of took away some of those extra steps. Class Dojo is a great resource, especially if you have families, especially for younger students, and Seesaw as well. Seesaw is a portfolio base where you can take pictures and upload and send assignments and things like that. So yeah, same thing. There's lots of resources out there, but I think finding something that works for you, but thinking about ways to teach and communicate content, and then also ways to connect that content to students and help them to make it the easiest way for them to actually complete the work. So I think we can kind of talk more about these tools in our breakout sessions later on, because a lot of it kind of connects to the grade level. So we will just move on.
And everyone, Kristen Zemke dropped her email into the chat as well. She is our digital learning expert. So if you would like her to come out and chat, well, when I say come out, I mean get on a Zoom call with your staff and chat about the different options, she's very happy to do that. Just feel free to give her an email.
All right, guys. So I'm going to talk about this next portion, which is about accessing and responding to text. So the other day, my husband was blowing bubbles with my 17-month-old, and he said to me, you know, you can hold a bubble in your hand if you dunk your hand in bubble mix first. I learned that from reading Fancy Nancy, and he was so proud of this fact that he learned. And it was just a reminder to me that it doesn't matter how many books you've read. It doesn't matter how easy the text is. You can still learn something. You can learn a new word. You can learn how to spell a word that you already knew. You can learn some background history or science information that's going to help you connect to other information. So to me, our first priority is getting books to kids, because if they are reading, they will be learning. So to that end, I think your first stop, if you haven't already, is to check out Epic. So this has tons of texts for kids age 0 through 6th grade, although honestly, their nonfiction stuff is good for 7th and 8th graders as well. First, you want to make a teacher account, and the link is, I'm pointing like you can see, where it says educator sign up page. That's a link where you can sign up if you don't already have an account. And then where it says roster instruction page, that gives you instructions for how to invite parents to download the app and give their kids remote access. So if they have a computer, a phone, a tablet, whatever, they can access this at home. There have been some issues with access on the weekends and after school hours, but it seems like they may have resolved that. And then that access is going to be free through the end of June. RazKid's a similar setup, but honestly, if you're feeling overwhelmed by the amount of stuff being thrown at you, I would start with Epic. The next thing I would look at is the Chicago Public Library resources. So especially if your students are old enough to have their own phones, they should know how to use Overdrive, because this is going to put them in charge of their reading lives. If you have a kid who wants to read Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, they're not going to find that on Epic, but they can find it at the library. And so this is going to let them take their want to read list that they were making at school and actually read that stuff from home. So if you're on a computer, you can use the link where it's to Overdrive. If you're on a phone or a tablet, you're going to download the Libby app. It's pretty straightforward. You're going to sign up. It will ask you to select your library, Chicago Public Library. It'll ask you for your library card number, which you can type in. It's right on the back. If it asks you for a PIN number, that's probably your zip code or the zip code that you had when you first applied for your card. So think about if you've moved since you moved to Chicago, you might have to think about what your first zip code was. If you want an in-depth tutorial on how to do this stuff, if I'm going way too fast, just let me know. And I'd be happy to set up a Zoom call or just a phone call to walk you through this. Sadly, we don't have time to do like in-depth on all this stuff today, but I do think it's really important, especially for your older students, to know how to navigate these resources, because that's how we're going to make them lifelong learners. So then on the next slide, once you've got them, once they have access to books, you're ready to start thinking about responding to text. And oh no, sorry, we're not there yet. There's kids, you might have some kids who still don't have access to internet or have a device. If that's the case, please let your coach know, because Big Shoulders is trying to connect those kids with devices. So make sure your coach knows if you have students who don't have devices. While we're waiting for that sort of to be solved, Scholastic Book Clubs is delivering directly to students' homes. So, you know, when they normally do their book order and it comes to the school, now they can have those shipped directly to their homes, and they do have some pretty affordable books there. I know that money's really tight right now, especially with a lot of our families. So purchasing books is not an option. Think about making some of your classroom library books or school library books available if your school is doing something like a packet pickup, right? And I know there's that anxiety about, I don't want to send books home because what if they never come back? Well, what is the point of a school library except to give students something to read, right? And our students need something to read right now. So this is what these books were meant for, right? These books have been living for this moment. So we want to get them into kids' hands. If losing money is really still an anxiety for you, talk to Liz. You know, we'll see how we can help make that better. But anyway, we can get books into kids' hands. Like, I feel like that's the first hurdle that we need to clear, even if we don't do anything else for the rest of the year. If they're reading, they're going to be learning. Okay. Yeah. So and now we're ready to think about. Oh, go ahead, Liz.
I was just going to say, Stacy, I know we have some administrators on the call too, but if you have any additional Bernie's book bags at your at your school, get those out as soon as possible. If you have any hiding in a cupboard or a cabinet or a hallway, send those out at packet pickup, because getting books into kids' hands is so helpful. And while we don't have an open checkbook necessarily, we can help you replenish some of those books at the beginning of next school year if you find that you are really missing many of those. The other thing, Stacy, as you brought up the Scholastic, if you had a book fair recently and you have Scholastic points, that might be a great place to use those, and either give them out at packet pickup or see if you can kind of send them directly to the students. And Kristen, I love your comment. Send home a whole bag of Bernie's books. Yeah, just get it out there. All right, sorry, Stacy, back to you.
Oh, no, thank you. That's great. So now kids have books, right? We're ready for the next step, which is getting them to respond to text. So I would think about sending out some kind of reading life check-in to see kind of how students think their reading life is going. Are they reading books that they want to read? Do they have a quiet place to read in their house? Do they have a good time to read? And then if you can do that on a Google form. If you don't know how to do that, again, let me know. But this is going to let you know which kids need your support. And then you can start reaching out to them one-on-one to sort of problem solve some of those issues. A phone call is great for that. If you do something like video conferencing, just remember your Virtus training, right? You don't want to be having a video call with a kid who's alone in a bedroom. Virtus training. Once you kind of know where kids are, you're thinking about reader responses, keep it simple, right? If they're reading, they're learning, we don't have to overcomplicate it. You do want to offer choices and flexibility. Some kids might only have access to nonfiction. Some kids might only have access to fiction. So if we say write about your favorite character, some kids might be stuck. So think about giving them options for both fiction and nonfiction that are going to work for a wide range of texts. I'm trying to change the slide like it's on you guys. Okay, Sarah, can I go? Thank you so much. So Sarah actually shared some really great stop and jot boards. So that link is to a Google Drive folder of sort of like prompts for what kids can be stopping and jotting about. So think about what students do when they're responding to text in your classroom. It doesn't have to be that different. If they're jotting on Post-its, if they're jotting in their reader's notebook, they can still be doing that and then just snap a cell phone picture and send it to you. If they need some prompts to help get them going, the stop and jot boards have some great things, and those are divided by by grade and also by standard. So maybe like once we start thinking about assessing and grading, it might be helpful. Maybe this week we're going to focus on this standard. Maybe next week we're going to focus on that standard. So those stop and jot boards can be really helpful for that. You can also Google reader response choice boards and get 9 million options. So there's one here that I just found online that seems kind of decent for nonfiction. So look, there's 9 thought prompts for your students. Say pick one and write about it, right? Just so that you're doing some thinking about whatever it is that you're reading. Next slide, please. So then once your students have these responses, how do they get them to you? Like we said before, if they're writing it on paper, they can just snap a photo on their phone and send it to you. They can text it to you if you have a Google Voice number, or email it, whatever's simplest. I like Flipgrid if you want to have students give a verbal response. Like Sarah mentioned that you can use it to share content with them, but I really love Flipgrid for having students share content with me. So if you say, hey, tell me about the book you're reading, then students can just film themselves talking about their book, and then students can respond to each other, which they really like. They can be a little bit silly, which they need right now. So Flipgrid is really great for that. I also always had students do, this is better for older kids, but just write their responses in a Google Doc. And then it's really easy for you to give them written feedback on their writing. So then you're getting kind of reading and writing in one fell swoop. And then for younger kiddos, Seesaw is a really good platform where they can post their work and you can give them feedback really easily in a good kid-friendly format. So that was a lot of information really quick, but we want to make sure they're reading. If they're reading, they're learning. This is not about holding them accountable. This is not about keeping them busy. This is about getting students to learn. And if they're learning, they're going to, be ready for next year. And that's the goal. So with that, I will turn it over to Liz.
Great. Thank you, Stacey. So Kristen, you put in the chat exactly what I was about to talk about. But before I sing your praises, I want to say thanks to Janine, who also put another link in the chat for First Books, which is a grant opportunity that you can apply for to get books into kids' hands. And I have to say to Stacey, I'm so glad you brought up the Libby app. If everyone can see here, I have my Libby app that has been keeping me well read throughout this time of social distancing. So the cool thing about that too is that kids can go online and apply for the card. So if they don't have a card already, they don't have to go into the library. It's all online. So that makes it really nice. I get to do the most fun part, I think. When everyone was picking what they wanted to present today, I was secretly hoping that I got to talk about this, and here we are. The most important thing right now is that we're connecting with kids, and we're making sure that our kids and our families are safe and healthy, and that they're engaging in this work, right? So Kristen dropped into the chat this first at-home learning check-in, and basically it's a well-being check-in as well. There are things on it about, what did you have for breakfast? Did you eat breakfast? What time did you go to bed? How are you feeling? And this is a great way just to get kids checking in. And also there's some short response there for them to do a little bit of writing. What I will ask is if you do decide to use this at your school, please make a copy first and then kind of send it out, and you can, make it suit your needs. Then the next kind of thing that we have shared here and that we'll send out is Kirk Zemke, who is our SEL social emotional learning guru, kind of created a Padlet that are resources for the head and heart, and it's broken down by grade level. And so when we're thinking about, checking in on kids' welfare, checking on their well-being, making sure that they're staying connected to each other and making sure that they're staying connected to their feelings and emotions, he has a lot of great ideas here. I know for me, it has been particularly difficult at times to stay connected to how I'm feeling and to kind of shrug off some of that anxiety. And so, I know that if it's hard for me, it's hard for kids. And so it might be helpful to push out some of these resources as a literacy assignment or as something that you're asking kids to do. The last thing that I really want to say is that if there are still families that you have not heard from, please, 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 I have the very old school telephone down there. Pick up the telephone and call those families that you haven't heard from. Just check in, see what's going on. Ask your principal or office staff if they can call. Principals or office staff, if you're on here with us, call those families that you haven't heard from. I have some teachers that I worked with that are sending good old-fashioned letters in the mail, and I think that has been really fun. I just got a homemade birthday card from my grandma today because she was unable to go to the store to buy me a birthday card, and it's probably the best thing that I've gotten this entire quarantine. And so I know that your kids would love to get a homemade card or a homemade letter for you. And then we talked about Zoom. It's okay to, oh, thank you, everyone. It's not till Easter. My birthday is on Easter this year. But I know that we have talked about doing Zoom as like a classroom, but it's also okay to do a Zoom that is just like, hey, optional, let's check in together. Let's play a game of find the roll of toilet paper. Let's play a game of show and tell. Just kind of keeping that connection together, because I know hearing from kids is that they just miss their friends and they just miss their teachers. So that the next slide, Sarah, is just has a couple of resources that we've already dropped into the chat, but we just want to send your way. Ooh, Anna said she did freeze dance on Zoom with her class. That sounds fun. I think we need to do a freeze dance with the whole Big Shoulders Fund staff. Two things that we mentioned earlier, but want to put out there again. We have created a Big Shoulders Fund literacy YouTube. And there are videos on there that you can push out directly to your students. When we asked you guys what you needed, that was kind of the big overwhelming thing came back, videos to push out directly to your students. So Alana and Sarah, Stacy, and I have created interactive read alouds, multiple days of a writing lesson, some reading strategies lessons. You can also use these as exemplars if you want to create some of your own videos. And then keep going to that Big Shoulders Fund distance learning site. Big, huge props to Kristen for putting this together for us. There's so many good resources on there. Share it widely.